Good afternoon, everybody. A very warm welcome to today's session. I'll start by saying a very happy new year to you all, under circumstances to which we probably didn't anticipate facing into, but nonetheless, a very happy new year. And I wish you all a tremendous year, personally and within your organisations, of what is going to be a year of recovery, I'm sure. I'm going to try my hardest not to use the C word, and I'm also going to try my hardest not to use the L word. Over the next couple of minutes. I surely will find that easier than I'm sure Brian will over the next 43 minutes thereafter. But I just wanted to open up today's session, of which is a series of sessions focusing, particularly in January, around the topic of employee wellbeing. I myself am extremely passionate about the wellbeing of our employees, and those that join the call that are working for Compass will no doubt be aware of my passion to look after the well-being of our employees through a mountain of different topics, which I'm sure you'll all agree stretches over quite a wide umbrella nowadays. You know, pre-March last year, well-being was certainly entering the centre stage. I can honestly say now 60 to 70% of my discussions on a daily basis are entirely around the well-being of our employees. It is now on centre stage. It is no longer about a January good feeling of topics around health and well-being. It's something that's going to stay around for a long time yet. It is certainly taking a lot of priorities at the moment. So I'm humbled to share the stage very shortly with Brian, who's going to talk to those attendees around well-being in an informal manner. The purpose of the 1 o'clock call was to try and crowbar into your lunch break so you can sit back, relax, and enjoy what Brian has to offer in an informal and relaxed environment. Hence why he's got his Christmas tree still with him, just to kind of bring that relaxed environment. So with that, I thank you for your attendance. I hope you enjoy the next 40 or so minutes with Brian. Brian, thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk to the teams and the guests on the call today. But enjoy, I can't wait to hear it, and I will speak to you all very shortly.
A pleasure, and thank you, Chris, and thanks to Maeve and the entire team at Compass Group for the opportunity to speak with you today as part of the Power of Pause series. So I know you've got some really interesting and some really fun webinars planned for the month. So it's a privilege to be able to kick off the series today. And as you said, so Happy New Year, first of all, to everybody that's joined us. So I hope, as much as possible, everyone had, a peaceful, relaxing break. And yes, as Chris has already mentioned, I still have the Christmas tree up. I just couldn't face taking it down there yesterday or today. So I have a 6-year-old, so I think it's probably going to stay up certainly for the weekend, possibly even longer, who knows. So for anyone that's joining us, I would love if you can make this session as interactive as possible. You can start by saying hello in the chat functionality down below. Let me know, is your Christmas tree still up? Did it snow where you are? This morning, it certainly snowed where I am in Dublin, just beside the Phoenix Park. So we had a lovely walk in the kind of the icy, the crunchy snow there this morning. So if you want, please use the chat functionality below to say hello. I think you might need to say, just make sure you say it's to all panelists and all attendees. Just make sure that setting is there so you can kind of mingle and network that way. Now, if you do have any questions as well, I'd love to answer them at any stage during the call. So for questions, go to the Q&A function. So down below, beside the chat function, the Q&A is private. So just drop a question into the Q&A, so only I can see that, and I'll be able to answer any questions that you might have through that if you put them in the Q&A. So Q&A for direct questions, the chat for a bit of interaction and a bit of fun. I'm just seeing if you pop up there. So snowing and freezing fog in South Kildare, I can imagine. Excellent. So great. Thanks everybody for the comments. That's great. So January, 2021, where did that come from? So regardless of what's going on, personally, I find January, it's a nice time of year to reflect on the year that's been, and also to plan for the year ahead. And in the work I do in the area of workplace well-being, I usually find that, similar to the way a lot of people will, return to the gym or exercise or at least plan that, I find that organizations as well at this time of year are kind of planning and thinking about implementing well-being initiatives. So I think it's a really nice, it's a really good time to have this discussion today and have this talk. So what am I going to talk about? I'm going to introduce you to an 8-step framework for workplace wellbeing program development and improvement. Now, this framework is the foundation for the postgraduate certificate that I designed and deliver in Trinity. It's also the foundation of my own online course, which is in this area. So, I think you should find it really, really valuable. Now, so the perspective I come from, I'll never tell you or your organization exactly what you should be doing. I'll never say you need a workshop on mental health or you need to focus on specific food in the canteen, for example. My role is to empower you and your organization to make those decisions, by giving you the knowledge and the tools to do so. So hopefully we can cover a bit of that today. And who's it for? It's really for anyone that has an input into or wants to have an input into well-being at their own workplace, or maybe even their future workplace. So the role doesn't really matter. You could be in HR, you might be in facilities, you might be in operations, that doesn't really matter. What matters is you care about the subject and you want to make a difference. So hopefully, the session today can be a nice foundation for all the other webinars that are going to follow this month. Now, I have some slides, so just bear with me one moment while I pull them up. And thanks everyone for saying, sunny Wales, fantastic. Hi Pam in Wales, plenty of snow in Kildare by the looks of it, so that's fantastic. So please keep the comments coming. Now let me just share my screen. Okay, so let me know if you can see that. I'm assuming everyone can see that. So let me know in the comments again. Has anybody heard of Simon Sinek? Simon Sinek, he's initially a TED Talk and now a great book called Start With Why. And for any of my lectures in Trinity or as part of the online course, I always start with why. Why do we care about this particular subject? Or, why is this important to us? So let's start with why when we're talking about the actual framework. Why is a framework for workplace wellbeing program development important? So I'll take it back a little bit. So I used to work in the corporate world. It feels like a lifetime ago. Back then it was a really busy job, demanding targets, deadlines. It was client facing, it was billable hours. So, it was a tough, demanding job, but I really tried hard to maintain a healthy lifestyle, but it was particularly challenging. And I started some stuff while I was there at 5-a-side, at lunchtime, running groups, lunch and learns, not too dissimilar to this. But I found it was a particularly challenging environment to actually get anything done. So I decided to educate myself in the area that I was passionate about, which is health and well-being. So, I became a gym instructor, personal trainer, sports nutrition, all qualifications in all of those areas. Plus, I discovered an organization called WellCOA, Wellness Council of America. So what I was looking to do was kind of marry my passion of health and well-being with my experience of being in the workplace for quite a period of time. And, because workplace health and well-being is about a lot more than physical health. So WellCOA seemed to be doing things really well. They've been 30 years in operation, knew what they were doing. So I learned a lot from them, did all their certifications. As luck would have it then, I was offered redundancy and set up my business, went out on my own. And the first few years were good, solid, kind of a lot of engagements with clients, with organizations. Mainly, I would say, it was kind of the one-off talks, a talk, class, a workshop, and then maybe I'd move on to the next organization. And from a business point of view, that was absolutely fine. But I could just see something wasn't sitting right with me. I'd go into one organization and give a talk. Then maybe in that organization, maybe, they get somebody else in on a different subject a couple of weeks later. Quite often, and kind of Chris was kind of hinting at this, they might have a week of well-being for 1 week of the year where they'd have a week of well-being. And it just kind of didn't sit right with me. You never brush your teeth just for 1 week of the year and expect to have, healthy teeth, or go to the gym just for 1 week of the year. So it just didn't sit right with me, kind of how things were being run in organizations, kind of the well-being within organizations. It was kind of treated as secondary. It wasn't given the same kind of importance as other areas. So I'm a recovering project manager. So, I need kind of structure. I need a bit of a foundation in place. So I started researching, well, how can we how can we kind of start measuring what we're doing? How can we see if what we're doing is working, and how can we improve upon that? Because I wasn't seeing any behavior change in the people that I was speaking to, really. And, you know, it certainly wasn't, there was no improvement in the bottom line for organizations. There was no long-lasting, sustainable change within those organizations, or benefits for that organization, with these kind of one-off or random acts of wellness, as I like to call them. So that's where that's where the framework comes from, and my desire to put a framework together comes from, and the importance to that. You know, and I'd love to claim responsibility, full responsibility for the framework, for the 8-step framework. The reality is I've pulled it together from a number of different areas. It comes from, a lot of it is informed by WellCOA, as I mentioned, the Wellness Council of America. They have their own framework, which they updated and iterated over time. So they've learned a lot of lessons. So I take a lot from what they've done. But so too, it's informed by academic research. So my co-collaborators on the Trinity program, Dr. Sarah Jane Cullinan and Dr. Jennifer Hines. So their research has informed a lot of what we're doing in the framework. And then so too, I run a community called Workplace Wellbeing Ireland. And the privilege of being kind of in that community, of running that community, is I get to see and I get to meet and I get to hear from organizations on a daily and a weekly basis of all the challenges they're facing, the barriers, and also, of course, the successes and how they're overcoming all those challenges. So the framework is made up of all of these steps. So that's pretty much, that's where it comes from. So it's a really, really well-informed and robust framework. And one final point before we actually get into the 8 steps. It's not a linear process, as in it's not like a typical waterfall. You don't just finish step 1 and then you're done with that and you can kind of move on to step 2. Look at these steps, look at these 8 steps as 8 plates. And there are 8 plates that are continuously spinning. And depending on where you are as an organization, you might be, you might be spending more time on a couple of particular plates at a given time, and that's absolutely fine. But all 8 plates are continuously spinning, and you're looking to continuously improve and iterate across each of the 8 plates. Excellent. Well, we get into the framework itself. Just seeing a couple of chats coming through. Let me see if I can see. Still about the snow, still about the snow, fantastic. Oh, and you're in York, bright and sunny and freezing in York, fantastic. Hi, Rachel, great to have you on board. Okay, so the 8 steps. Now again, let me know in the chat, jump in at any stage, where should you start on the 8 steps? That's a question I ask quite often, where should you start? And if you're starting from absolute scratch, step 1 is probably an obvious choice, kind of makes sense. As I said, it's not necessarily linear, so you could actually start from anywhere. And here is where a lot of organizations, in fact, the vast majority of organizations that I work with, where they start, or where they're stuck actually in an endless cycle. And that is, if my screen can move on, yeah, step number 5. So choosing the interventions. So now what's an intervention? An intervention can be anything from a talk, a class, a workshop, all the way up to a policy document. It could be a collaborative space within your canteen. I'm seeing lots of really cool canteens these days with excellent collaborating spaces. So canteens aren't just about your lunch or your breakfast anymore. There's really cool collaborative spaces in there. Could be a relaxation room, or it could be that policy. It could be a flexible working policy. So interventions are broad. They can be quite broad. But a mistake I see a lot of organizations, really well-intentioned organizations, a mistake I see them making just in this continuous cycle of choosing intervention after intervention. But there's so much more groundwork we could be doing before we get here to inform the interventions that we're choosing. And so that's what I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about now, is how do we inform our decision-making when it comes to choosing these interventions? Let's go back to step 1. Step 1 is, we can argue about what the most important step is. I guess it depends where you are really, again, but this certainly is a crucial step. I mean, if you don't have senior leadership support, their commitment and their alignment, you're really struggling from the outset. So step 1 is we want to grow as much as possible our committed and aligned leadership. And it's a verb in there, like it's grow. So you're always working on this. It's going to be a process. Easier said than done. you might be in the lucky position where you're pushing an open door, where your leadership team are bought in already. They want this. They just genuinely believe it's the right thing to do. So you're pushing an open door. Or of course, you could be up against a closed door where it's get away and go back to work and stop messing around with this fluff, which happens too. And it's everything in between. So how do you go about growing this commitment, especially if you're in the latter kind of group? Here's how Adam Grant sees it now, at a very, very simplistic level. Adam Grant, he's probably one of the world's foremost organizational psychologists. And when he said, how do you bring leadership with you? How do you bring anybody with you on your well-being journey, but in particular when it comes to leadership? And this is how he summarized it. Hard data, so facts, figures, numbers, your evidence, your quality evidence, and that can be external research. It could be your internal data, what people are saying they want, plus the human stories. So can you make it personal? Is there a personal story within your own workplace of, well-being, some well-being achievements? Maybe some of the leadership team themselves have a particular interest in a certain area. Maybe we can make it a personal in that regard. So hard data plus human stories. The course I mentioned, so the online course that I do, we actually go through a process, the how. So we've had the why statement, why we care about this. Now we're looking at the how. That's all well and good, but how do you actually go about growing that leadership support? It's a process. It's going to take time. We've got 4 steps we can step through over time to try and build that relationship with leadership and bring them with us. Step 1, can we establish common ground? So I think the most important point here is we got to look at most organizations we're talking about are businesses need to generate revenue. So business performance is important. So it's really important that we don't lose sight of that as well-being leaders or well-being advocates. Most organizations too, they'll have a vision statement. So can we align what we're doing from a well-being perspective? So can we derive a well-being vision statement from the organizational vision statement, vision and values of the organization? So can we align those two things? I'll give you an example, and it's a really simple example. Johnson & Johnson, they have a really robust well-being program. And their organizational vision statement is, we want to support and promote health and well-being to create, the healthiest clients out there. Their well-being vision statements, is pretty much derived from that. If we want to support, healthy clients, healthy people, we need the healthiest workforce in the world to support them. So that's pretty much so. It's that one kind of makes so much sense. But there's other examples out there as well. So there's a really nice starting point. How can you align your organizational vision statement with your well-being vision statement? Make it personal, as we've discussed already. In particular, maybe is there someone on the leadership team that already has a keen interest in a certain area? Maybe there's a runner. Can you organize a couch to 5K? Get the leader maybe as the kind of sponsor for it. Can you tie in the charity element? Get a lot of people involved. So how can you make it personal? The evidence is important. We're going to speak about that a little bit more in step 3. Is there internal evidence? Is there external research, which there is, which I can talk about again later? And how can you get those facts, those figures, those numbers together to almost turn it into like a business case? And then, really important, often overlooked, what exactly is it that you're asking for? Is it kind of something really short term? Or what I would encourage you to think more about is something longer term. Can you look for something for like a yearly budget? Is it a 3-year plan, a 3-year strategic plan? Is it time? Is it resources? It's not necessarily just budget. So what exactly is it that you're asking for? So have a think about that and confirm that before you actually go to your leadership team. So out of all of this, hopefully we'll have aligned our well-being vision and our values with our organizational vision and values. And the output of this kind of process should be a business case. And that business case is going to be a living and breathing document. So this is our well-being business case. We'll update this every year. We'll do our own internal data gathering exercises. And this is something, our role here, I guess, we want to make it very difficult, if not impossible, for the leadership team to say no to what we're saying here. So we've given a really valid business case as to why well-being makes a difference in our organization. Step one, does that make sense? I think it's important to spend a little bit of time on step one because it is a really important, step. That all making sense? Excellent. So step one is our leadership. We're looking at the leadership team. And here's we'll jump ahead to the what, if you like. If maybe a couple of years down the line, here's exactly what it looks like in practice. We've got a nice bit of research from Title talking about, committed and aligned leadership is the senior leadership and management's visible advocacy. So they're there, they're visible, they're talking about this, they're communicating, they're promoting well-being at any chance they can. It's their program participation. So they're on the webinars, they're asking questions, when we're back in the office or in the workplace, they're in the front row asking questions, depending what the event or the activity is. And of course, it's not just about writing a check, but it's important as well, the allocation of dedicated resources, the health promotion program, be that the budget, be that time, which is, I would argue, even more important than budget, and what other resources are required. So that's what it looks like. Step two then, so we're still talking about people. So this is where our grassroots meets, the leadership team, if you like. If you think about it, a lot of my HR friends will say to me, no one listens to HR. So if you're trying to run something be it from one person or one team in a silo in HR, in operations, in facilities, no matter where it is, it's really challenging to get that message across, to get everybody on board. And we want well-being to be owned by the entire organization as opposed to just one person or one team. And creating a team of wellness champions or a network of wellness champions throughout the organization is the way to do that. So these are people who are going to input into the process. They're going to feed back from their peers whenever they can. They're going to be communicating. They're going to be promoting what's going on. They're going to be participating. So they're the eyes and ears on the ground for the well-being leader, if you like. And who do we want represented here? Let's take a typical organizational structure. I mean, you want somebody represented from finance, from IT, from facilities, from operations, from every department. Maybe you're split over lots of locations. You want different locations represented. Maybe you've got quite a few different role types within your organization. Maybe there's office-based staff, maybe there's a field force, maybe there's factory staff, there's people on the road in cars and trucks. So you want all those roles represented. Is there part-time, is there full-time, is there shift work? So you get the idea. Maybe even you want your third-party contractors with a voice inputting into the process. So an organization like Compass Group would have quite a few members of staff on site. I think it's kind of important to give those people a voice in whatever it is that you're doing. So creating that team, creating that network of champions throughout the organization is really powerful. So this is, again, our people step where our grassroots meets the leadership team. And there should be a mix of seniority levels in this wellness champion team as well. Quite a few age ranges as well. It's good to have different ages represented. So just a good mix of colleagues represented and voices. I've kind of mentioned this already, but this is our why statement, if you like, for the wellness champions, because wellness needs to be a shared value across the organization. It's not something that should be owned by one person or one group. That all making sense? Fantastic. Step 3. So we've got our people's input now, but we've got them on board and they understand the process. But now we want to go out to the entire population. So we want to understand the needs and wants by gathering meaningful data. And so often overlooked, it always surprises me. This could be anything. If you're focusing on the internal data for starters, I mean, asking your colleagues what they're looking for is a surefire way to increase your chances of whatever it is you're doing being successful. A mistake I've seen made a couple of times is, for example, a smoking cessation program in a workplace. A well-intentioned leader or HR leader or wherever sees, a group of employees outside smoking and says, "Oh, we need a smoking cessation program," but without asking the colleagues themselves whether they actually want, first of all, whether they want to give up, number one, which is pretty important. Number two, do you want to participate in a smoking cessation program amongst your colleagues, with all your colleagues, where you'll be, with a facilitator in the room and talking about your smoking? Quite often, people may not want to do that. So you need to ask the right questions. Surveys are powerful. So too are focus groups, one-to-ones, exit interviews. There's lots of tools and techniques for gathering meaningful data. And the internal data is only one part of it. There's lots of really excellent external evidence-based research out there at the moment. Healthy Ireland, back in late 2018, released some really kind of powerful research and statistics around well-being in the workplace. And if anyone wants that research, I can send you a link to that afterwards. There's no problem. So in other words, that kind of Healthy Ireland research, if you like, plus a lot of the US-based research, add that to your own internal data. What are the needs and wants? What are people asking for? Where do their priorities lie within our workplace? When you put those two together, all of a sudden you've got a pretty powerful kind of business case, or the formation of a pretty powerful business case there. And a third piece of data you could gather is competition. So what are the competition doing? Are they releasing any kind of information? There's nothing that makes maybe a leadership team sit up and take note more than when you maybe mention what the competition are doing. That all makes sense, the data. And Jane's just asking, how do you measure the success of the program, short, medium, long? Well, I guess, first of all, we'll come to step 4. We're going to kind of plan it out in a bit more detail. I guess it depends what you're measuring, first of all, and establishing what you're measuring. What are the perspectives of your key stakeholders? What are they looking to see in your program? For example, are they looking to see maybe talent attraction and retention is a key issue. So I imagine statistics and data around that would be crucial. Maybe it's as simple as the bottom line they're looking to understand. Is it how much are we spending on this program, and how much are we effectively getting in return? Or maybe genuinely it's the health benefits for our colleagues. Are our colleagues getting healthier over time? So perhaps if you have a private health insurer partner, maybe they have some anonymized health data that they can share with you year on year, that you can see where you're improving. Or I'll give you a really good example. So Sky Ireland are being quite innovative in this area. They've developed their own well-being metric, internal metric that they use. It's kind of embedded in their annual or their biannual surveys. So it gathers metrics from, I think there's definitely questions around the work-life balance, but a lot of them there's some of them are to do with your people manager. Some of them are to do with your, do you feel like you're learning and developing, you're progressing in your role? So some really interesting metrics, and they're pulling them all from different areas in the survey, and they're coming out with a well-being metric. So every employee, anonymized now completely, will get a score out of 100. And year on year, they're saying, well, is our well-being score as an organization, is it going up or going down? So that's how they're judging or viewing whether they're going up or going down. And that's something they created themselves. It was their own input from their champions and their leaders to say what well-being means to us as an organization. And then that's how they kind of came up with the metric, if you like, and where to pull the different metrics from. So that was a really interesting one. And I should say, for anyone who's actually looking to get started, this step in particular can feel a little overwhelming, because there's so much data you could be gathering, and there's an awful lot. Anyone who's looked at data analysis in any detail knows, there's an awful lot to it, and even parsing that data and understanding that data is challenging. And hands up, like, this is not my area of expertise. Anytime I need something done in detail in this area, I'll get on to my colleagues at Trinity, Sarah Jane or Dr. Jennifer Hines, know this in detail. So don't feel free to reach out if you're looking for any further detail or support in this area. But what I would say is an excellent starting point is a completely free tool It's a government-led tool. Is workpositive.ie. It's a psychosocial risk analysis, and it's GDPR'd to within an inch of its life. So that's something you can, one or two people in your team can kind of fill out initially with your company detail, and you can share that amongst all your colleagues, and that will give you a baseline of where you are as an organization and maybe some key points that you need to focus on. That's a good starting point. That's workpositive.ie. Seeing something coming through on the chat here. Just give me one moment. Oh yeah, well, I'm going to type. Yeah, Pam. I'm going to type it in here, Pam, so everyone has it. Make sure I spelled it correctly. Workpositive.ie. Yeah, so check that out. It's a really excellent tool, and not a whole lot of people know about it either. But it's a completely free tool, and it's really it's an excellent starting point. Okay. Let's move on. So step 4 then. So step 4, effectively what we're going to do now, this is where we get strategic with what we've done so far. So effectively what we're doing in step 4 is documenting all the work we've done in steps 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to document, ideally we're starting in the very first line, very first paragraph, and our well-being operating plan is going to be our well-being vision statement. We should have the role, responsibility of our well-being champions and any other well-being leader or personnel documented here. Is there a budget? Is there time allocated? That's all going to be in this document. Plus, we'll have detail on the needs and wants of our colleagues, thanks to step number 3. So from a brainstorming session around this time when we're documenting here, looking at the data, parsing the data that we've got, where should we be focusing our attention as an organization? You know, is it maybe there's, for example, we've seen, thanks to the trends in our data that we've gathered, that, you know, stress is an issue and it's on the increase for our colleagues. And in particular, stress-related absenteeism is on the increase. So maybe that's something we could focus on and do something about. So perhaps here is a high-level focus area, and it's always good to have smart goals and smart focus area so we can put something measurable on it. Can we say here that, you know, in 3 years' time, or maybe even year on year, that we can reduce stress-related absenteeism by 10%? So that's our high-level goal. That's something we believe is needed and we can focus on. So can we do that? So maybe depending on the size of our organization, we might have a couple of high-level focus areas, depending what the kind of, you know, the needs and wants are. And in step number 5, I'll talk about how we might actually support that. But here's the step where, you know, we get strategic, we've got our high-level goals, and again, depending on our organization, you know, does our organization have an overall organizational strategy of 2021 to 2024 or 22 to 25? Can we get well-being on the agenda for that, first of all? And number 2, then this is how we go about it. So this is going to give us a well-being operating plan, and then we want to get that operating plan into our overall organizational strategy document, strategy planning. We want to make well-being a priority, just like marketing is going to be in there, just like sales is going to be in there, IT, facilities, etc. That all making sense? Excellent. Let's take a pause here just for a moment. So we've gone through half the steps, so 8 steps, and we're halfway through. We've covered quite a bit, but we've done an awful lot of work here, so a serious amount of work. But have a think about it. We haven't spoken about a single intervention yet. So where most organizations spend almost all of their time, we haven't even looked at that yet. So think about how much work we've done now, and how much better informed we are now as we go into step number 5, which is choosing the interventions. Look at all the data we have. We've got our leaders on board. We've got a team of grassroots champions. We've got all their input. We have a much better understanding of the needs and wants of our colleagues, and it's all documented now. We're being strategic about this. We've got high-level focus areas. So now, as we go to choose the interventions, I mean, you know, these interventions are almost going to be choosing themselves. Let's take our kind of, you know, our kind of case study, if you like, the 10% reduction in stress-related absences. For example, that's our goal. year on year for the next 3 years. If we have that as our high level goal, so I'd be thinking then for interventions, I would be thinking, right, we need to do something in the area of stress management, obviously. We need to do something in the area, maybe resilience. We need to look at our workplace. Can we create a more open, work environment where people can put their hand up and say when they're feeling stressed, when they're feeling overworked, when it's just not their day. Can we create that kind of safer work environment? And how would we go about that? Because that's kind of what the data was telling us. So if that was the case, from my perspective, I'd be thinking about, we need some experts in. We need someone like Sea Change Ireland, for example, who do excellent work in this area. Maybe we need an organization like Suicide or Survive, who do brilliant, fantastic workshops. So this is kind of like, a longer term partnership we're talking about with an organization like that, who could support us, who could workshop with the entire organization over time, and slowly but surely over time, kind of introduce this kind of safer, psychologically safer work environment. That's kind of what I would be thinking. And in addition to that as well, then of course, yes, you can now, you've got a clearer vision of kind of the what previously would have been the random one-off speakers. You can get somebody in talking about resilience. You can get somebody in talking about mental health, stress management. And while they are one-off, they're not as random as they had been previously, because they're supporting your overall focus area as we've documented. So they're actually, there's a real genuine reason why we're bringing these people in, and we can tie that in, before and after they're in, and all the communications around it. Maybe we can signpost people to our EAP program, employee assistance program, if we have one, or whatever other supports or whatever other direction or signpost we want to send people to. Does that make sense? So we're getting it clear. I think it's kind of becoming clear now exactly where we're going with this, and why it's important. And the why for this step is really straightforward. Effectively, we're just saying we want to align with the previous 4 steps effectively. So we're to bring the right interventions to our organization, as opposed to the random interventions. So that's what all our groundwork to date has been leading up to. Well, the first 4 steps were, almost the groundwork before you get to the interventions. The next few steps now are almost like the support the interventions and the high-level focus areas. So this one kind of goes without saying, to communicate strategically. Although surprisingly enough, the WellCOA, who I've mentioned a few times, they haven't prioritized communications in their framework, and that's something Sarah Jane and I just felt was really missing, the importance of communicating about what you're doing in terms of your wellbeing program. It always surprises me the amount of organizations that, I'm thinking of one in particular actually, who actually ran a survey, and in their opinion, they had a really strong, really good wellbeing program. They ran a survey. 50% of their employee population didn't even know the program existed. And an even higher percentage then weren't able to identify a lot of the activities or the interventions that were included in the program. So just really poor communications on their part, even though they had a really good program. So communication is key. And I think it was Ron Getzel and Karen Kent. They're kind of thought leaders in the US. They've got a really strong research paper on this, and that's one of the main reasons we included this in the 8 steps. And it's only dating back to 2016 as well. It's really recent, and so they emphasize the importance of the communication first of all when it comes to health promotion in the workplace. But you see how simple the questions are that they're asking. Is so the communication you're providing should include details on how does the program work, where do I sign up, and what's in it for me. And I think Barbara Brennan of Sea Change summarized or gave a really good example of this quite recently. She spoke about the EAP programs in most workplaces. EAP, the employee assistance programs, fantastic resource, often really underutilized. Barbara was saying, if anyone who knows of the EAP programs, you'll hear the employer will tell you, look, it's private and confidential. Just give that number a call, and It's totally private and confidential. If you've ever called up in an EAP program, you'll know you call up, first of all, you're asked for your name, then you're asked for your date of birth, your address, what company you work for. So all of a sudden, it's not that confidential, or certainly doesn't feel that confidential. So if you just provide that detail in your communications, look, you're going to be asked these 3 or 4 questions, and the reason you're being asked these questions is because that person just needs to allocate this call to a particular cost center and allocate it against a particular company. That's the only reason. It's completely private and confidential. So communication is really important. Okay, we're on the final furlong here now. Again, any questions? I'm seeing I've got 1 or 2 questions that have popped in, but any more questions, let me know. I'll stay on the line afterwards and we can answer any questions if you have any. So step 7, so foster a supportive environment or cultivate a supportive environment. And at the very beginning, I said, the steps aren't linear. And this step is a prime example of it, because this step could actually come anywhere. This could even be step 0. Arguably, if you don't have a supportive environment, no matter what you do from a well-being perspective, it won't really matter. The best program in the world will be useless if the environment that it's being delivered in isn't supportive, isn't kind of like a culture of health, or at least a healthy, health supporting environment. So this is a really crucial step. And again, there's great research on it. This is from a paper from Dr. Ron Getzel. Look him up. He's a US based, a real thought leader in this area. He's got some excellent material. And here's what he says is the key elements to contribute to that culture of health, or that supportive environment. And so steps 1 and 2 are pretty much the actual environment themselves, so the physical environment, and again, often overlooked, the social environment. And how much are we missing that at the moment, the social environment, the water cooler, the canteens, having a chat, coffee, lunch in the canteens. I remember the kind of cool collaboration spaces that workplace canteens are now. How much are we missing those kind of conversations and those interactions and those collaborations at the moment? Quite a lot. Like Zoom is great, but we're definitely missing those kind of things. So I personally am really looking forward to getting back to that. And it's kind of unsurprising that we're missing that, because according to the World Health Organization, the well-being, they split well-being into 3: physical well-being, mental well-being, but also social well-being. So it really is, it's a key area, and it's something we're definitely missing out on. So the top 2 are actually the environment themselves. But let's look at the other points he makes here. These are actually all related to our previous steps as well. So, our leaders and managers, so the leadership teams, our peers, and our employee involvement. That's our grassroots, that's our well-being champions. So all of these factors are contributing to our culture of health, our supportive environment. All make sense? Excellent. So step 8, our final step. And a question I get asked a lot, and I actually think I saw a question come in on it, is where do you start, or depending on your size, where do you start? I did initially say if you're starting out from scratch, step 1, but actually, do you know what? Step 8, this step is actually a really excellent place to start if you're absolutely starting from scratch, and even if you're not. Start with the evaluation. Have a think about the evaluation. So if we're developing a well-being program at our workplace, or well-being initiative, whatever it is, who are our sponsors? Who are the stakeholders? In one year from now, what will they be expecting to see, or what will their success criteria be 1 year from now? If we have a slideshow, we're giving them a presentation, we're showing them some facts and figures. What numbers, what facts, what figures will they be looking to see 1 year from now in order to say, this program was a success? So have a think about that. And again, back to the point I made around step 3 is, what's their perspective? Are they interested in talent attraction and retention? Are they interested in just the bottom line and just the finances, or the health behaviors? What are they interested in? And once you understand that, once you have an idea of that, that can inform your evaluation metrics. So you can put some metrics in place in those particular areas, work back from those, and have that in the back of your mind as you're developing your entire program, so you know exactly from day one what you want to evaluate. So the evaluation is going to be really important. You can use a lot of the tools and techniques that you'll have adopted in step number 3, the gathering meaningful data to evaluate. If you are starting from scratch, maybe you do have some random acts of wellness already ongoing. Don't let that put you off. Start small. The low-hanging fruit around our interventions is participation rates, engagement rates, survey and satisfaction surveys. There's actually quite a bit you can do around, just the intervention, step number 5, to gather some data and to improve upon it. So evaluation, really important. The celebration piece as well, that's not just in there for, to actually celebrate and have a party, although you can do that certainly too, but this is almost more about recognition. Maybe you did that Couch to 5K program, maybe quite a few people took part, maybe you got some nice photos, get those photos up in the newsletter, start celebrating people. Maybe there's someone who never did a 5K in their life and they've completed one. Get it up there, talk about that, start sharing that. Great opportunity to do that. Maybe it's an opportunity to start talking about or sharing the bio of the wellbeing champions in your newsletter, in your monthly newsletter. Get it out there, get some recognition out there of what you're doing. All another form of communication as well. So it's all positive. It's all a positive feedback loop. And then of course, it almost goes without saying, but whatever you're looking to do, we're evaluating, we're gathering meaningful data. So we know where we are now. We know what our baseline is. Maybe we've done that work positive survey. So we've got a baseline and we can improve upon it. Once you've measured something, now we have a baseline, we can improve upon that. So we want to iterate and we want to improve. And yes, you can go back to step 1, or as I said, more likely you got those 8 steps in the air, those 8 plates are constantly spinning, and you can, and you depending on where you are, you spend a little bit more time on one, a little bit more time on the other as you progress through the year. That all makes sense. I realize now I do talk quite a bit. It's 10 to the hour. So if anyone has any questions, I'm going to stay on the line. I'll answer any questions. Before I do finish up, there's just a nice summary of the 8 steps. There they are, 1 to 8. I'm happy to share them with you, and just the one pager if you want to drop me an email. I'll also, again, if anyone wants that Healthy Ireland research, let me know. I can send it to them. Big thank you to Maeve, to Chris, and the entire team at Compass Group. Best of luck with the rest of the webinar series. Go to the Compass Group Ireland LinkedIn page to follow them and find out all the details about all the upcoming webinars. I believe there's meditation next. There's an exercise class. So it's a really nice mix of wellbeing activities for the entire month of January. And the very best of luck with the rest of the series. And thanks to everybody for listening in as well. If you want to find out more about the community, you can join the totally free LinkedIn group, Workplace Wellbeing Ireland Community. And if you want to dive deeper on the 8 steps, I recommend you go to workwellinstitute.org. And as I said, drop me an email, brian@workwellireland.ie, for any of the information, any of the data I've shared today. Very happy to pass it on to you as well. So thanks again, Chris. Thanks again, Maeve. And the very best of luck with this. I'm going to hang on. If anyone has a question, drop me a question and I can answer it. Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Thanks for all the great feedback. Thanks, Pam. Thanks, James. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Ty. Yeah, you're very welcome. Leonardo, thank you. And Joan, thanks a million. And yeah, and Happy New Year again, everybody. And you're welcome, Hazel. Thank you. Time flies when you're having fun there, isn't it? Like 10 to the hour. And I think Maeve's recording this as well, so you'll have access to the replay as well to go back over anything you might need. You're welcome, Francis. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Margaret. Gary asks, so will a workplace wellbeing program, I assume you mean at a cost, or does it pay for itself? Yeah, good question. I mean, over time, certainly will pay for itself. The first thing I would say is the program doesn't need to cost a penny. It doesn't need to cost a cent. You know, modeling, so if modeling healthy behavior, a culture is effectively behaviors. So if you're modeling healthy behaviors over time, that's going to lead to, you know, a culture of health within an organization. That doesn't cost a cent. It really depends then, you know, the kind of interventions that you're looking to do. If you're looking to do something and partner with an organization, then that's gonna cost, of course. But if you're looking to do something like I tried when I didn't know what I was doing initially back in the corporate world, I started, you know, the lunch and learns literally, and they weren't all necessarily well-being related. Some of them were. We had the five-a-side football. We had the lunchtime running groups. Anyone kind of drop in, drop out. There was also the walking group as well, because as inclusive as possible. You know, all of those interventions, small, simple steps, none of those cost a cent. The bigger cost, if you want to call it a cost, is time. So people's time. It's going to need someone or a group of people to get together to organize these initiatives, these events. So I would argue time is more important than budget, certainly in the beginning. But over time, if you are investing in well-being in your people, then it will come back to you, absolutely. And it's really only the US research that's out there at the moment. There isn't Irish research on the financial returns at the moment, but the US research says that for every dollar you put in to well-being, you get $3 back over time. You don't expect a 6-month return, maybe not even a 12-month return. You're probably talking about a three-year investment. Oh, you're welcome. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Hazel. Oh, yeah, thanks, Gary. You're very welcome. Yeah, Avinash, thank you. You're very welcome. Maeve, Chrissy, any final questions? Any final thoughts? All good, yeah. Okay, brilliant, yeah. Thanks, Maeve. Okay, fantastic. Listen, I'll be doing yoga in the kitchen. Great stuff, Gary. Yeah, the old home workouts are really popular now, aren't they? The living room, especially in that snow. You wouldn't want to go for a run in that. You'd kill yourself. Okay, I'm gonna finish up anyway. Listen, thanks guys. As I said, drop me an email, drop me a line. Happy to continue the conversation afterwards.